She leans across the restaurant table, eyes sparkling with possibility, and makes her request. Maybe it's a weekend getaway she expects you to fund. Maybe it's emotional labor she wants you to perform. Maybe it's simply more of your time, attention, or resources than you're willing to give. The moment hangs in the air like smoke, and you feel that familiar knot in your stomach. You know what you should say. You know what your boundaries are. You know what serves your best interests and long-term goals, but instead you hear yourself saying yes. Again, you watch yourself cave to the pressure, sacrifice your standards, and give away pieces of yourself you can't afford to lose. Later, alone in your apartment, you'll wonder how it happened, how you became the man who can't say no to women, how your resources became everyone else's emergency fund, how your time became a public utility that anyone can access on demand. Today, I'm going to teach you the most powerful skill no one ever taught you: how to reject women in ways that actually make them respect you more, not less. Because mastering rejection isn't about being cruel. It's about understanding the brutal economics of human attention and learning to protect your most valuable assets before you're left depleted and alone. Every man reading this is being systematically drained by women who have discovered the perfect exploitation strategy: wanting costs nothing, but giving costs everything. This asymmetry creates the fundamental imbalance that's destroying your life, your goals, and your self-respect. Think about the economics of wanting versus giving. When she wants something from you, it costs her exactly nothing to ask. No energy expenditure, no resource depletion, no opportunity cost. She can want your time, your money, your emotional labor, your attention, your validation. And the act of wanting is completely free. It's like having unlimited credit with no consequences for overspending. But when you give, you pay with everything you actually have. Your time, the one resource you can never recover. Your energy, finite and diminishing with each demand. Your money, earned through hours of your life you'll never get back. Your emotional bandwidth, already stretched thin by the demands of building a successful life. This creates what economists call a moral hazard problem. When the costs and benefits of actions are distributed asymmetrically, you get predictable behavioral patterns. She has every incentive to want more and no incentive to want less. You have every reason to give less, but every pressure to give more. The result is systematic resource depletion that leaves you wondering where your life went wrong. You started with goals, ambitions, boundaries, and self-respect. Now you're a human ATM dispensing whatever anyone requests because you never learned the most essential skill for protecting yourself: strategic rejection. You're caught in a psychological trap that was set the moment you were born male, in a society that programs men to be providers and women to be takers. This isn't accident. It's systematic conditioning designed to extract maximum resources from you, while providing minimum accountability for those extracting them. For women, wanting operates on what psychologists call a variable reward schedule, the most addictive form of behavioral conditioning ever discovered. Sometimes wanting works, sometimes it doesn't, but the occasional success makes the behavior irresistible to continue. It's like a slot machine that pays out just often enough to keep you pulling the lever. Since wanting costs nothing, there's no natural limit to the behavior. She can ask for your time, money, attention, emotional labor, validation, support, resources, and energy without any depletion of her own reserves. Every request that succeeds reinforces the strategy. Every rejection that comes with guilt, explanation, or negotiation teaches her that persistence pays off. Meanwhile, you're trapped in the opposite dynamic. You've been programmed from boyhood to believe that your value as a man comes from your ability to provide, protect, and please the women in your life. Your father modeled this, your teachers reinforced it, your culture celebrates it, your media glorifies it. When you try to protect your resources by saying no, you face immediate punishment, anger, emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, threats of abandonment, withholding of affection, accusations of selfishness, and the suggestion that real men would gladly sacrifice themselves for women's comfort. This creates what behavioral economists call a negative reinforcement cycle. You're not rewarded for setting boundaries, you're punished for having them. You're not celebrated for protecting your resources, you're shamed for not depleting them fast enough. The system is designed to extract everything you have while making you feel guilty for wanting to keep any of it. Most men live in a prison of scarcity that makes rejection feel impossible. When you only have one potential client, firing that client feels like business suicide. When you only have one woman showing interest, rejecting her requests feels like romantic suicide. When your options are limited, your leverage disappears. This scarcity operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Sexual scarcity. Most men have limited access to female attention and affection. Social scarcity. Most men have few friends and limited social support. Economic scarcity. Most men feel financially vulnerable and uncertain about their future security. Emotional scarcity. Most men receive so little validation and appreciation that any source becomes precious. 18. When you're operating from scarcity, every no feels like you're risking everything. Reject her request for expensive dinner? She might lose interest. Decline to be her free therapist? She might find someone who will. Refuse to fund her lifestyle? She might upgrade to someone more generous. This scarcity mentality turns you into a supplicant rather than a selector. You're not choosing what serves your best interests. You're hoping she'll continue choosing you despite your resistance to her demands. You're negotiating from weakness rather than strength, fear rather than confidence, desperation rather than abundance. The cruel irony is that scarcity mentality creates the very outcomes you're trying to avoid. Women can sense desperation, like sharks sense blood in water. They lose respect for men who can't protect their own resources. They lose attraction to men who value their approval more than their own standards. Scarcity thinking doesn't preserve relationships, it destroys them. It transforms you from a man with boundaries into a resource extraction site. It changes her from a partner into a parasite. It converts potentially healthy dynamics into toxic patterns of giving and taking without balance or respect. The reason you can't reject women isn't because you're nice, it's because you're terrified of their emotional responses. You've been trained to believe that female anger, disappointment, or upset feelings are catastrophes you must prevent at all costs, even the cost of your own well-being. This fear was installed in your psychology during childhood, when the women in your life, mothers, sisters, teachers, relatives, used emotional manipulation to control your behavior. You learned that saying no to women results in emotional storms that make your life miserable until you capitulate. You discovered that giving them what they want restores peace, while maintaining boundaries creates chaos. Now, as an adult, you're still that little boy desperately trying to avoid making the women angry. When she makes a request you want to decline, your nervous system activates the same threat response you felt as a child when mum was upset. Your body floods with stress hormones. Your mind races through worst-case scenarios. Your conditioning takes over and you say yes to restore emotional equilibrium. This fear is particularly acute with entitled women who are raised as daddy's little princess and have never learned to handle rejection gracefully. These women have been taught that their desires should be immediately fulfilled, their requests automatically granted, their emotional comfort prioritized above all other considerations. When you reject an entitled woman, you're often dealing with someone who has no experience processing disappointment, no skills for handling frustration, and no framework for understanding that other people have legitimate needs and boundaries. Their emotional response to rejection can be explosive because they've never developed emotional regulation around not getting what they want. But here's what you need to understand. Her emotional response to your boundaries is her responsibility, not yours. You're not obligated to sacrifice your resources to manage her feelings. You're not required to say yes to avoid her anger. You're not responsible for preventing her disappointment by depleting yourself. The more successful you become, the more people want from you, and the more critical rejection becomes for protecting the success you've built. This creates a paradox where achievement simultaneously makes boundaries more necessary and more difficult to maintain. Success attracts resource seekers like honey attracts flies. As your income increases, more people want your money. As your status rises, more people want your social access. As your influence grows, more people want your connections. As your time becomes valuable, more people want to consume it. Women in particular are attracted to successful men precisely because success indicates resource availability. The same achievements that make you an appealing partner also make you a target for resource extraction. Your success becomes evidence that you can afford to give more, not recognition that you need to protect what you've built. This creates enormous pressure to continue giving at levels that threaten your ability to maintain the success that attracted her in the first place. She wants the lifestyle your success provides, but often resents the time investment required to maintain that success. She enjoys the benefits of your achievements but may sabotage the behaviors that created those achievements. The cruel mathematics of success mean that the more you have, the more others expect you to share. The higher you climb, the more people want to climb with you at your expense. The more valuable your time becomes, the more people want to waste it. The more resources you accumulate, the more pressure you face to deplete them. This is why wealthy men often become isolated and why successful men frequently struggle with relationships. Not because success makes them antisocial, but because success makes boundary setting a survival necessity that most people interpret as selfishness. Rejection isn't cruelty, it's communication. It's information about your boundaries, priorities, and values. It's education about what you will and won't accept. It's training for how you expect to be treated. Done correctly, rejection can actually increase respect and attraction while protecting your resources and maintaining your standards. The key is understanding that rejection doesn't have to be hurtful when it's delivered with skill and intention. Most people experience rejection as painful because they've been trained to interpret no as personal criticism rather than strategic information. But this interpretation is learned, not inherent, which means it can be unlearned through better communication. Strategic rejection involves 3 core principles: clarity, kindness, and consistency. Clarity means being direct about what you're declining without elaborate explanations that invite negotiation. Kindness means delivering the rejection in ways that preserve dignity and demonstrate respect for the person even while declining their request. Consistency means maintaining your boundaries regardless of emotional pressure or manipulation attempts. The most powerful rejections often include reframing that helps the person understand why your no is actually valuable information. Instead of just declining, you can position your rejection as evidence of your standards, your priorities, your character, or your respect for both of you. For example, instead of saying "I can't afford that restaurant," you might say, "I've learned that the best connections happen when we focus on each other rather than expensive distractions." Instead of "I don't want to," you might say, "I respect both of us too much to agree to something I can't do enthusiastically." This approach transforms rejection from punishment into gift. You're not withholding what she wants, you're providing what she needs: interaction with a man who has boundaries, standards, and self-respect. You're offering her the opportunity to experience what it's like to be with someone who values himself appropriately. The most skilled rejections actually make the person being rejected feel better about themselves, not worse. This isn't manipulation, it's recognition that you can honor someone's value while still declining their request. You can appreciate their interest while still protecting your boundaries. I learned this from a woman who rejected a second date with me in the most masterful way I've ever experienced. Instead of making excuses or giving vague reasons, she said something that made me feel like $1 million despite being turned down. "I'm actually too attracted to you, and I'm afraid I'd lose myself completely if we continued seeing each other." This rejection accomplished several things simultaneously. It positioned my attractiveness as the problem, not my inadequacy. It suggested that her interest was so strong it scared her. It implied that I had some kind of magnetic power that threatened her self-control. It made rejection feel like the highest possible compliment. The technique involves finding genuine positive qualities about the person or situation, while still maintaining your boundary. You're not lying or manipulating, you're choosing to emphasize the positive aspects while still declining what doesn't serve you. You're amazing, and you deserve someone who can give you the attention you deserve. I'm too focused on my business right now to be that person. You're so interesting that I'd want to spend hours talking with you, but I've committed to an early morning workout routine. You're the kind of person who makes me want to say yes to everything, which is exactly why I need to be disciplined about my time. This approach teaches people that rejection isn't about their unworthiness. It's about your boundaries. It helps them understand that no doesn't mean you're not good enough. It means this doesn't fit my current priorities. It demonstrates that you can value someone highly while still declining their requests. Just as physical work develops calluses that protect your hands from damage, emotional work develops psychological calluses that protect your boundaries from erosion. Learning to reject gracefully requires building tolerance for other people's emotional responses to your boundaries. Most men are psychologically soft when it comes to female emotional reactions. You've been conditioned to treat women's feelings as emergencies requiring immediate resolution. When she's upset, disappointed, or angry about your rejection, your nervous system interprets this as a crisis demanding action. But emotional calluses allow you to remain calm and compassionate while she processes her feelings about your boundaries. You can acknowledge her disappointment without changing your decision. You can empathize with her frustration without sacrificing your standards. You can care about her feelings without making her feelings your responsibility. This development process requires gradual exposure to rejection scenarios, starting with low-stakes situations and building toward more challenging ones. Practice saying no to small requests before attempting to reject major demands. Build your tolerance for mild disappointment before dealing with explosive anger. Each successful rejection where you maintain your boundary despite emotional pressure strengthens your psychological calluses. You learn that people survive disappointment. You discover that relationships often improve when boundaries are clear. You realize that respect increases when standards are maintained. The goal isn't to become callous toward others' feelings. It's to develop enough emotional resilience that their feelings don't control your decisions. You want to be able to care about their emotional experience without being controlled by it. Your time, energy, money, and attention are finite resources that must be managed strategically if you want to achieve anything meaningful in life. Every yes to someone else's request is a no to your own goals, priorities, and well-being. Strategic rejection is simply resource management applied to human relationships. The framework begins with honest assessment of your actual resources versus your current commitments. Most men are already overcommitted before any new requests arrive. They're already giving more time, energy, and attention than they can sustainably provide. Adding new commitments doesn't expand their capacity. It dilutes their effectiveness across all areas. Resource protection requires making conscious trade-offs rather than unconscious sacrifices. When someone makes a request, the question isn't, "Can I do this?" but "What will I have to give up to do this?" Every commitment has opportunity costs that must be calculated honestly. This means developing what economists call portfolio thinking about your resources. Just as financial advisors recommend diversifying investments rather than putting everything in one asset class, you need to diversify your resource allocation rather than concentrating everything on one person's demands. The most successful men treat their time like venture capitalists treat their money. They invest it strategically in opportunities that provide the highest returns, and they reject everything else regardless of how compelling the pitch might be. This framework helps you understand that saying no to her request isn't selfish, it's strategic. You're not withholding resources out of meanness. You're allocating them according to priorities that serve your long-term success and well-being. Women are attracted to men who have boundaries precisely because boundaries indicate value, standards, and self-respect. A man who says yes to everything demonstrates that his time and attention aren't valuable enough to protect. A man who rejects inappropriate requests demonstrates that his resources are precious and must be earned. This creates a counterintuitive dynamic where rejection often increases attraction rather than decreasing it. When you decline her request with confidence and kindness, you're showing her that you value yourself appropriately. You're demonstrating that access to your resources requires meeting certain standards. Boundaries function as filters that separate people who respect you from people who want to use you. The women who appreciate your boundaries are relationship material. The women who resent your boundaries are resource extractors who will drain you until you have nothing left to give. Setting boundaries early in relationships establishes the framework for all future interactions. You're teaching her how you expect to be treated, what kinds of requests are appropriate, and what level of consideration you require. You're creating a relationship culture based on mutual respect rather than one-sided giving. The most confident rejections communicate abundance rather than scarcity. You're not saying no because you can't afford to say yes. You're saying no because you have better options for your resources. You're not declining because you're selfish. You're declining because you're strategic. This positioning transforms rejection from evidence of limitation into demonstration of standards. You're not a man who can't give more. You're a man who chooses not to give more because you have priorities that matter more than immediate approval. The way you handle rejection in the early stages of any relationship determines the entire trajectory of that relationship. If you establish patterns of saying yes to inappropriate requests, you're training her to make more inappropriate requests. If you demonstrate that emotional pressure works to overcome your boundaries, you're teaching her to use emotional pressure more frequently. Healthy relationships require mutual respect for boundaries, not one-sided resource extraction. The woman who respects your rejections is a woman who can build something sustainable with you. The woman who resents your boundaries is a woman who will drain you until the relationship becomes unsustainable. This means that effective rejection actually serves the relationship by establishing healthy dynamics from the beginning. You're not damaging the connection by maintaining boundaries, you're protecting it from the toxic patterns that destroy most modern relationships. The relationships that last are those where both people understand that no is complete information that doesn't require explanation, justification, or negotiation, where both people respect each other's right to have priorities, standards, and limitations, where both people contribute rather than one person giving and the other taking. Strategic rejection teaches women how to be better partners by showing them what behavior leads to positive outcomes versus negative outcomes. When you consistently reward respectful requests and consistently decline disrespectful demands, you're providing clear feedback about what creates successful interactions. The ability to reject effectively requires transforming from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking about your options, your value, and your future possibilities. When you believe that opportunities are limited, rejection feels like shooting yourself in the foot. When you understand that better opportunities exist, rejection becomes strategic optimization. Abundance thinking doesn't mean pretending you have unlimited options. It means recognizing that the right opportunities are worth waiting for, and the wrong opportunities cost more than they provide. It means understanding that your resources are valuable enough to be selective about how you invest them. This transformation often requires expanding your actual options before you can psychologically embrace abundance. Building your career, developing your social circle, improving your physical condition, expanding your skills, and increasing your income all contribute to genuine abundance that makes rejection feel strategic rather than self-defeating. As your options expand, your tolerance for poor treatment decreases. You become less willing to accept disrespectful requests because you have alternatives. You become more confident in your rejections because you're not dependent on any single person's approval for your well-being. The most attractive men are those who clearly have options and use those options to be selective about their commitments. Women can sense when a man has alternatives and when he doesn't. The man with alternatives can afford to have standards. The man without alternatives can't afford to reject anything. Learning to reject effectively is a skill that improves with practice, like any other skill. Most men are beginners at rejection because they've spent their entire lives avoiding it rather than developing competence at it. This means starting with basic techniques and gradually building toward more advanced applications. Begin with low-stakes rejections where the consequences of poor technique are minimal. Practice declining small requests from acquaintances before attempting to reject major demands from intimate partners. Build your confidence and skill with situations that don't threaten your most important relationships. Focus on developing the core components of effective rejection: clarity in communication, kindness in delivery, consistency in application, and confidence in your right to have boundaries. Master these elements individually before combining them in high-pressure situations. Study examples of masterful rejection from successful people who've learned to protect their resources while maintaining relationships. Notice how they communicate boundaries without defensiveness, how they decline requests without elaborate explanations, how they maintain kindness without sacrificing firmness. The goal is developing what psychologists call rejection resilience, the ability to say no repeatedly without emotional exhaustion, guilt, or relationship damage. This resilience comes from understanding that rejection is information, not punishment, and that boundaries serve everyone involved, not just the person setting them. Mastering rejection liberates you from the prison of other people's expectations and demands. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of saying yes to everything and wondering why you never have time, energy, or resources for your own goals. It releases you from the resentment that builds when you give more than you want to give. This liberation allows you to be genuinely generous from a place of choice rather than obligation. When you can say no easily, your yes becomes meaningful. When you protect your resources strategically, you can invest them generously in opportunities that align with your values and priorities. The most fulfilled men are those who've learned to reject skillfully and give strategically. They say no to good opportunities so they can say yes to great ones. They decline requests that drain them so they can accept commitments that energize them. They protect their resources from extraction so they can invest them in creation. This isn't about becoming selfish or cruel. It's about becoming strategic, and intentional. It's about recognizing that your life is finite, your resources are limited, and your choices matter more than your ability to please everyone who makes demands on your attention. The women who respect your boundaries are the women worth keeping in your life. The women who resent your standards are the women who would drain you until you have nothing left to offer anyone. Learning to distinguish between these two types through strategic rejection is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Your future self will thank you for every inappropriate request you decline today. Every boundary you maintain now protects the resources you'll need tomorrow. Every strategic rejection you master increases your ability to build the life you actually want rather than the life that others want to extract from you. If this analysis has shown you the strategic importance of protecting your resources through skillful rejection, subscribe to this channel for more insights into the psychology of boundaries and relationship dynamics. Hit that notification bell because mastering these principles could be the difference between building the life you want and watching others consume the life you've built. Share this video with any man who needs to understand that saying no strategically is the foundation of saying yes meaningfully. Remember, rejection isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's not withholding, it's prioritizing. It's not selfishness, it's strategy. Master it, and you master your life.